I never thought I'd be the kind of mother-in-law who would sell her daughter-in-law's car out from under her. But then again, I never thought I'd be served dinner on paper plates, while everyone else ate from my cherished heirloom china either. Life has a funny way of revealing people's true colors, doesn't it? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. It was supposed to be a special evening. After working 35 years as a pediatric nurse, I had finally paid off the mortgage on my home. The very same 3-bedroom colonial where I'd raised my son Andrew after his father passed away when he was just 7. I'd invited Andrew and his wife Vanessa over to celebrate this milestone. I even pulled out the bottle of Dom Perignon I'd been saving for a truly special occasion. I spent the entire day preparing for this dinner. My special herb-crusted rack of lamb, Andrew's favorite since childhood, roasted to perfection. The scalloped potatoes bubbled with golden cheese, exactly how Vanessa liked them. I'd even made my mother's secret recipe peach cobbler, the dessert I'd prepared for every meaningful family occasion since Andrew lost his father. At precisely 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Andrew stood there with a bouquet of lilies, my favorites. Vanessa trailed behind him, engrossed in her phone, barely looking up to acknowledge me. "Mom, congratulations!" Andrew swept me into a hug. "I can't believe you actually did it. Dad would be so proud." His words brought tears to my eyes. Robert had always dreamed of owning our home outright. "Thank you, sweetheart. That means everything to me." Vanessa finally glanced up from her screen. "The house looks nice, Margaret," she said, not bothering to step forward for a hug or even offer a smile. After 5 years of marriage to my son, she still kept this artificial distance between us. "I made all your favorites," I said, trying once again to bridge that gap. "Come on in. Dinner's ready." We moved to the dining room where I'd set my grandmother's antique oak table with the Wedgwood china passed down through 4 generations of women in my family. The silver gleamed under the chandelier light, polished to a mirror finish that morning. Crystal glasses caught the light, sparkling like diamonds around the table. "Wow, Mom, you went all out," Andrew said, clearly impressed. "This is a celebration," I replied, popping the champagne cork with a satisfying sound. "To no more mortgage payments and owning this home free and clear." I filled 3 flutes and handed them around. Vanessa took hers without comment, then set her purse down on my credenza with a heavy thud. "Oh, Margaret, I almost forgot," she said, reaching into her oversized designer bag. "I brought something to make cleanup easier for you." My confusion lasted only seconds before she pulled out a package of paper plates, the flimsy, cheap kind, from the dollar store, and began distributing them around the table. "What are you doing?" I asked, genuinely puzzled. "Well, you always complain about how tired you are after these dinners," Vanessa said, her voice sickeningly sweet. "I thought this would save you the trouble of washing dishes." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "That's very thoughtful, but I've already set the table with my grandmother's china. It's a special occasion." "Oh, the china is for us," she clarified, placing a paper plate atop my carefully positioned china setting. "This one's for you. You shouldn't have to wash your own dishes on your celebration night." My heart sank as I watched her arrange a paper plate in front of my chair, and only my chair. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. In Vanessa's eyes, I wasn't worthy of dining on the same plates as them. I was the help, the outsider, someone to be tolerated but not included. Andrew seemed oblivious to the insult as he filled his wine glass again. "That's thoughtful, honey." I stood frozen, champagne flute in hand, as 35 years of mortgage payments, 15-hour nursing shifts, and countless sacrifices for my son crystallized into this moment of humiliation. I wanted to object, to point out the blatant disrespect, but something in Vanessa's satisfied smile stopped me. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was deliberate. "Of course," I said quietly, taking my seat at the head of the table. How considerate. Throughout dinner, I watched as they ate off my family heirlooms while my lamb soaked through the cheap paper plate, making it sag dangerously. Every time I cut into the meat, the plate shifted, threatening to spill everything onto the lace tablecloth my mother had crocheted by hand. "The lamb is delicious, Mom," Andrew said between bites. "Thank you, dear." I managed to smile, though it felt brittle on my face. "It's your father's recipe." "Speaking of recipes," Vanessa interrupted, setting down her fork with a clatter against my grandmother's fine china. "We have some exciting news." Andrew beamed at his wife, reaching over to squeeze her hand. "We do. We're thinking of starting a family." For a moment, genuine joy pushed aside my hurt. A grandchild. Robert's grandchild. How he would have loved that. "That's wonderful news," I said, meaning it completely. "Which brings us to why we're really here," Vanessa continued. "We've been looking at houses in Oak Ridge Estates." Oak Ridge Estates was the newest, most expensive development in our city, gated communities with swimming pools and private tennis courts. Houses there started at 7 figures. "That's ambitious," I said carefully. Andrew was a high school history teacher, and Vanessa worked in pharmaceutical sales. They lived comfortably, but not extravagantly. "We've crunched the numbers," Andrew explained, excitement coloring his voice. "With your help, we could manage the down payment." "My help?" I echoed. "We were thinking," Vanessa said, her voice taking on that honeyed quality that always preceded something outrageous. "Since you own your house now, you could sell it and move into something smaller. The equity would be more than enough for our down payment, and you'd still have plenty left over." The paper plate in front of me finally gave way, lamb juice soaking through and staining my mother's tablecloth. Neither of them noticed or paused. "It makes perfect sense," Vanessa continued. "This place is far too big for just you, and the stairs will become difficult as you age. We found a lovely senior living apartment complex not far from Oak Ridge. You could be close to your future grandchildren." I dabbed at the spreading stain with my napkin, my thoughts spinning. They wanted me to sell my home. The home where I'd raised Andrew alone, where every corner held memories of Robert, where I'd planned to live out my days, so they could live in luxury? "And what about my car?" I asked suddenly, surprising. Even myself. Vanessa blinked. "Excuse me?" "My car," I repeated. "The Lexus SUV parked in the garage, the one I paid off 3 years ago. Will you be asking for that too?" Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Andrew had the decency to look embarrassed. "Mom, that's not fair. We're thinking about the future. Your future too." "My future," I echoed, thinking about the paper plate now soaking through to the table beneath. "I see." The evening deteriorated. After that, I served dessert mechanically, not tasting a single bite of my mother's peach cobbler. When they finally left, Andrew kissed my cheek and promised to call soon to discuss the details. Vanessa didn't bother with the pretense of affection, already tapping away at her phone as they walked to their car, the luxury sedan I'd helped them buy as a wedding present. I stood in my driveway watching their taillights disappear, the enormity of their request, no, their assumption, settling over me like a suffocating blanket. For the first time since Robert's funeral, I felt truly alone. But beneath that loneliness, a spark of anger ignited. The audacity of serving me on a paper plate in my own home while plotting to take it from me. The casual dismissal of 35 years of sacrifice. The assumption that I would simply step aside, downsize my life, to fund their extravagance. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced the halls of my home, touching the walls, remembering. Here was where we'd marked Andrew's height each year, the pencil lines still visible on the kitchen doorframe. There was the den where Robert had taught Andrew to play chess on rainy Sundays. The backyard where I'd hosted Andrew's graduation party, so proud I thought my heart might burst. By dawn, I'd made a decision. I wouldn't be moved aside like an inconvenient piece of furniture. I wouldn't be served on paper plates in my own home. And I most certainly wouldn't be funding Vanessa's dream house in Oak Ridge Estates. Little did I know that this was just the beginning. The paper plate incident was merely the visible crack in a foundation that had been crumbling for years. As I made coffee that morning, I had no idea that within weeks I would indeed be selling a car, but it wouldn't be mine. And Vanessa's comfortable life was about to experience a dramatic change in transportation options. The paper plate incident forced me to confront a painful truth I'd been avoiding. Andrew and Vanessa's relationship with me had always been transactional. Looking back, the signs had been there from the beginning, but a mother's love can be willfully blind. When Andrew first introduced me to Vanessa 6 years ago, I'd been thrilled. After nursing school, he'd finally found someone who made him happy. She was beautiful, ambitious, and charming, at first. I still remember how she'd complimented my modest home, admiring the family photos and asking about each one with what seemed like genuine interest. "You've created such a warm space here," she'd said, and I'd beamed with pride. The wedding was small but lovely. I'd emptied my savings account to give them the celebration they wanted, including the honeymoon too. Bali that Vanessa had her heart set on. "It's worth it to see him so happy," I told my sister Caroline when she questioned the expense. Their first apartment was a rental near the high school where Andrew taught. I'd visit every Sunday, bringing homemade meals and often helping with their laundry or cleaning. Vanessa always had a ready excuse: work stress, migraines, social obligations that prevented her from joining these family meals. When she was present, she'd find subtle ways to criticize. The seasoning in my lasagna was interesting, my cleaning methods were old-fashioned, my career choice was admirable for someone without a university degree. Then came their first home purchase, a charming starter house needing significant renovations. Without being asked, I wrote them a check for $30,000, money I'd been saving for a river cruise through Europe, a dream Robert and I had shared. "You'll have plenty of time for travel later," Andrew assured me. "This is an investment in our future." The renovations stretched my retirement budget even further. I spent weekends painting walls and refurbishing cabinets while Vanessa directed from the sidelines, always finding something that wasn't quite right. When they needed new furniture, I offered my credit card with its favorable interest rate. When their car broke down beyond repair, I co-signed the loan for the luxury sedan they now drove. And through it all, I told myself this was what mothers did. We sacrificed. We supported. We gave without expectation of return. The turning point came 3 months after the paper plate dinner. I was at their house for a rare Sunday meal. Vanessa had actually extended the invitation, which should have been my first warning. The table was set beautifully, with flowers and candles. I noticed they were using the Royal Doulton china set I'd given them as a housewarming gift, still in perfect condition despite sitting unused in their cabinet for years. "This is lovely," I said, genuinely touched by the effort. "What's the occasion?" Andrew and Vanessa exchanged meaningful glances. "We wanted to tell you in person," my son said, reaching for his wife's hand. "We got pre-approved for the Oak Ridge house." My stomach dropped. "Oh? I didn't realize you'd found another way to manage the down payment." Vanessa's smile was brittle. "Well, that's the thing. We still need your help, but we've found a different approach." They proceeded to explain their brilliant solution. The luxury sedan they drove, the one I'd helped them acquire, was actually still in my name as co-signer. Similarly, their current home still had me listed on certain documents from when I'd helped with the renovations. Their plan was breathtakingly Simple. I would sell my car, not theirs, mind you, and take out a home equity loan on my newly paid-off house. Together, these would provide the down payment they needed. It's perfect, Vanessa concluded. You keep your house, we get our dream home, and once we're settled in Oak Ridge, we'll help you refinance to remove the equity loan. I sat there, fork suspended mid-air, as 35 years of choices crystallized into perfect clarity. I saw the pattern that had been there all along, the subtle manipulations, the one-sided giving, the gradual erosion of my financial security to fund their aspirational lifestyle. You know, I said slowly, setting down my fork, I've been thinking about your situation quite a bit since our last dinner. They leaned forward eagerly, no doubt expecting my capitulation. And I've realized something important, I continued. You're right that changes need to be made, but not the ones you're suggesting. Their expressions faltered. Starting tomorrow, I'm restructuring my finances to secure my retirement. That means closing all joint accounts, removing my name from co-signed loans, and liquidating certain assets that no longer serve my best interests. Andrew frowned. Mom, what are you saying? I'm saying no, Andrew. No to the equity loan, no to selling my car, and no to any further financial entanglements between us. Vanessa's face darkened. After everything we've done for you? All? The times we've included you in our lives? This is how you repay our kindness? The irony of her statement, after years of my financial support, might have made me laugh if it weren't so painful. Instead, I simply reached for my purse. I should go, I said quietly. Thank you for dinner. Andrew followed me to the door, his expression confused and hurt. Mom, I don't understand. We're family. We're supposed to help each other. I paused at the threshold, suddenly exhausted. Yes, we are. And I've been helping for years. But families are built on mutual respect, Andrew, not just shared DNA or shared debt. Driving home that night, tears blurred my vision, but my resolve remained firm. The next morning, I called my financial advisor and my attorney. By week's end, I had a comprehensive plan in place. The car was the first order of business. As the primary co-signer on their luxury sedan, I had legal options I'd never considered using. When I explained the situation to my attorney, including the years of financial support and the paper plate incident, he confirmed what I suspected. I could legally reclaim and sell the vehicle, applying the proceeds toward the outstanding loan balance. They'll need to find alternative transportation, he warned. Are you prepared for the fallout? I thought of the paper plate again, of being served like a second-class citizen in my own home. Yes, I answered. I believe I am. Next came their current home. The renovation funds I'd provided had been documented as a loan, not a gift, a precaution my sister Caroline had insisted upon. You don't loan money to family, Andrew had protested at the time. It's not a loan if we're family. Now, I was profoundly grateful for that paperwork. With interest, they owed me nearly $45,000. The most difficult decision involved my will. After Robert died, I'd made Andrew my sole beneficiary. Now, after careful consideration, I revised my estate plan. Half would go to Andrew, but only in a carefully structured trust. The remainder would be divided between my sister's children and a scholarship fund for nursing students at the local community college. 2 weeks after that, revealing Sunday dinner, everything was in place. I sent a formal letter to Andrew and Vanessa outlining the changes and giving them 30 days notice regarding the car. I expected anger, perhaps even threats. What I didn't expect was the complete silence that followed. No calls, no texts, no emotional visits demanding explanations. Just as I began to worry, Caroline called. Did you know Andrew and Vanessa are telling everyone you've had some kind of mental break? They're saying you've turned against them, that you're vindictive and irrational. My heart splintered a little more. And people believe them? Some do, she admitted. but others are asking questions. Apparently, Vanessa's had a pattern of alienating people who don't serve her purposes. The betrayal stung, but it also strengthened my resolve. If they could so easily paint me as unstable to justify their financial expectations, then I'd made the right decision. On the 30th day after my letter, I arrived at their house with a tow truck and my attorney. Andrew wasn't home. Convenient timing, I suspected, wasn't coincidental. But Vanessa was. She stood on the porch, arms crossed, as the driver hooked up the sedan. "You won't get away with this," she said, her voice carrying across the manicured lawn for the neighbors to hear. "Andrew will never forgive you." I approached her calmly, attorney at my side. "This isn't about forgiveness, Vanessa. It's about consequences. The car will be sold, the loan paid off, and any remaining balance will still be your responsibility." Her face contorted with rage. "How am I supposed to get to work? To doctor's appointments? You know we're trying to have a baby." For a moment, compassion wavered within me. Then I remembered the paper plate, the casual cruelty of it, and the years of calculated taking disguised as family obligation. "There's a bus stop 3 blocks from here," I replied evenly. "The monthly pass is $65. Given what you'll save on car payments, insurance, and gas, you might find it quite economical." As I turned to leave, she called after me, her voice breaking slightly. "We're family. You can't do this to family." I paused, looking back at the woman who had served me. Dinner on a paper plate while plotting to take my home. That's exactly right, Vanessa. You shouldn't do these things to family. I'm simply the first one between us to remember that. The weeks that followed were both the hardest and most liberating of my life since losing Robert. The sedan sold quickly, covering most of the outstanding loan. As for the home renovation debt, my attorney filed the necessary paperwork to place a lien on their property, not to force a sale, but to ensure the debt would be paid whenever they did sell. Andrew finally called 6 weeks after the car was taken. His voice was cold, controlled in a way I'd never heard before. "Mom, we need to talk about what you've done." We arranged to meet at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown where neither of us had history. When I arrived, he was already seated, a cup of coffee cooling untouched before him. He looked older somehow. The boyish charm that had always softened his features now hardened into something more rigid. "Vanessa's had to take unpaid leave," he began without preamble. "The bus schedule doesn't accommodate her work hours, and ride-sharing costs more than we can afford right now." I nodded, acknowledging the information without accepting responsibility for it. "That sounds challenging." "Challenging?" His voice rose slightly. "You've upended our entire lives. The Oak Ridge deal fell through. Vanessa's miserable. And for what? Because you felt slighted over some paper plates?" The simplification of my decades of support into wounded pride over dinnerware might have angered me once. Now, it only confirmed the emotional distance between us. It wasn't about the plates, Andrew. It was about respect. Or rather, the complete lack of it. It was about years of one-sided giving with nothing but entitlement in return. "So this is punitive? You're teaching us some kind of lesson?" I sighed, suddenly bone-tired. "No, honey. I'm simply stopping the pattern. I'm securing my future and letting you secure yours, without my financial involvement." By leaving Vanessa stranded without transportation? By putting a lien on our home? By reclaiming funds that were always meant to be repaid, I corrected gently. By removing myself from financial obligations that were destroying our relationship, rather than supporting it. He stared at me as if seeing a stranger. Perhaps he was. The mother he knew, the one who said yes to every request, who emptied her accounts to fill theirs, who accepted paper plates while they dined on china, that woman was gone. "I don't know who you are anymore," he finally said. The words hurt, but the truth in them could not be denied. "I'm finding out who I am, Andrew. Something I should have done years ago." We parted without resolution, the chasm between us too wide to bridge in a single conversation. Walking back to my car, my sensible paid-off Lexus, I felt a curious lightness despite the emotional weight of the encounter. For the first time in decades, I was making choices based solely on what was right for me. That realization sparked a cascade of changes in my life. I'd spent so many years defining myself through the lens of service to others, first as Robert's wife, then as Andrew's mother, and finally as Andrew and Vanessa's financial safety net, that I'd forgotten how to exist as simply Margaret. I started small. I joined a book club at the local library, making friends with women who knew me only as Margaret, not as someone's mother or widow. I took a pottery class, discovering a talent for creating delicate, functional pieces that soon filled my kitchen shelves. I volunteered at the hospital where I'd worked for 35 years, but this time in the garden program, helping patients find healing through nurturing growing things. 6 months after selling Vanessa's car, I received an unexpected visitor. Caroline's daughter Eliza, my niece who'd recently graduated from nursing school, stood on my porch with a small duffel bag and uncertainty in her eyes. "Aunt Margaret? I hate to impose, but I just accepted a position at Memorial Hospital, and my apartment won't be ready for 2 weeks. Mom suggested I might be able to stay with you temporarily." The request, so different from the entitled demands I'd grown accustomed to, touched me deeply. "Of course, sweetheart. I have plenty of room." Those 2 weeks stretched into a month as Eliza's apartment renovations fell behind schedule. Having her bright energy in the house reminded me how empty it had been. We fell into an easy rhythm. She took the evening shifts I'd always hated during my nursing career, coming home as I was waking up. We shared breakfast while others ate dinner, swapping stories about difficult doctors and challenging patients. One morning, as she helped me plant tulip bulbs in the front garden, she asked the question everyone in the family had been dancing around. "Have you heard from Andrew lately?" I shook my head, tamping soil around a cluster of bulbs. "Not since our coffee shop meeting. Caroline keeps me updated occasionally." Eliza nodded thoughtfully. "Mom mentioned they're looking at houses in Ridgeview now, much more modest than Oak Ridge." "That's good," I said, meaning it. "Ridgeview is a lovely area, good schools." She also said. Eliza hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. She said, "Vanessa's been taking the bus to work for months now. Apparently, she complains about it to anyone who'll listen." Despite everything, I felt a twinge of sadness. Not regret, I knew I'd made the right decision, but sadness for what might have been. In another reality, one where mutual respect formed the foundation of our relationship, I might have been helping them choose that house in Ridgeview, offering to watch their children, building the extended family I'd always envisioned. "The bus builds character," I said lightly, though the joke fell flat even to my own ears. Eliza squeezed my soil-covered hand with her equally dirty one. "For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Setting boundaries isn't cruel, it's necessary." Her validation, so freely given and unexpected, brought tears to my eyes. As autumn turned to winter, my life settled into new patterns. Eliza found an apartment but still came for breakfast twice a week. My pottery sold well at local craft fairs, providing a supplementary income that funded small luxuries, theater tickets, weekend trips to the coast, a painting class I'd always wanted to try. I expanded my garden, planning for spring flowers that would bloom long after I'd planted them, an act of faith in the future. The holidays approached, bringing their inevitable emotional complexities. Through Caroline, I learned that Andrew and Vanessa would be hosting Christmas this year. The invitation extended to the entire family, except me. "It's ridiculous," Caroline fumed over the phone. "I told them we wouldn't come if you weren't included." "Don't do that," I said quickly. "Don't make people choose sides. Go, enjoy the day." Give Andrew my love." "But it's not right," she insisted. "Few things in families are entirely right," I replied, surprising myself with the hard-won wisdom. "We do the best we can with what we understand at the time." On Christmas Eve, I hosted a small gathering at my home. Caroline and her husband, Eliza and her new boyfriend, 2 friends from the book club, and 3 from the pottery class. We ate on my grandmother's Wedgwood china, drank mulled wine, and sang carols around the piano I'd finally learned to play. As midnight approached and guests prepared to leave, the doorbell rang. Puzzled, it was too late for deliveries or carolers. I opened the door to find Andrew standing on the porch, a small gift in his hands, snowflakes melting in his hair. "Hi, Mom," he said softly. "May I come in?" The house fell silent behind me as everyone sensed the magnitude of the moment. I stepped back, opening the door wider in silent invitation. He entered cautiously, taking in the decorations, the lingering guests, the signs of a joyful evening in progress. "I'm sorry to interrupt," he began. "You're not interrupting," I assured him. "We're just finishing up. Would you like some pie? There's plenty left." The ordinary question seemed to disarm him. He nodded, following me to the kitchen where I cut him a generous slice of pecan pie, his favorite since childhood, and placed it on a china plate. Not paper, never paper. "Vanessa and I have been doing some counseling," he said abruptly, staring at the pie instead of eating it. "It's been unilluminating." I remained silent, giving him space to continue at his own pace. "She didn't come with me tonight. She's not ready for that yet. But she knows I'm here." He finally looked up, meeting my eyes. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said at the coffee shop, about respect and patterns." "And?" I prompted, gently when he fell silent again. "And you were right." The admission seemed to cost him something. "We took advantage of your generosity. We treated it as an entitlement rather than a gift. The paper plates." He winced. "That was Vanessa's idea, but I let it happen. I didn't see how deliberately hurtful it was." I nodded, acknowledging his words. "Thank you for saying that. We found a house in Ridgeview," he continued. "Much smaller than what we wanted in Oak Ridge, but it's ours, truly ours. We qualified for a first-time homebuyer program with down payment assistance. No family loans, no co-signers." Pride swelled in my chest, not the possessive pride I'd once felt when he achieved something I'd facilitated, but a cleaner, more distant admiration for his independent accomplishment. "That's wonderful, Andrew. I'm happy for you both." He pushed the small package across the counter toward me. "It's not much, but we wanted you to have this." Inside the carefully wrapped box was a set of car keys attached to a silver photo frame keychain. The frame held a photo of Andrew as a child, sitting on Robert's shoulders, both of them laughing. "We've been saving," he explained. "It's not much, just a down payment on a used car for Vanessa, but we did it ourselves. No loans, no co-signers." The symbolism wasn't lost on me. This wasn't about the car itself, but about breaking the cycle of financial dependence. About growing up finally at 34. "It's a perfect gift," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Thank you." We talked for another hour after the last guest departed, cautiously rebuilding bridges neither of us had been sure could be salvaged. As he prepared to leave, he paused at the door. "Mom, would you consider coming for dinner next week? At our place?" The invitation hung between us, weighted with significance. "I'd like that," I said carefully. "But I need to know something first. Will I be eating off china or paper plates?" For a moment, he looked stricken. Then he caught the small smile playing at the corners of my mouth and relaxed. "China, Mom. The good set you gave us, and Vanessa will be washing the dishes herself afterward." After he left, I stood in the doorway, watching snowflakes dance in the glow of the streetlights. The future remained uncertain. One dinner wouldn't heal years of damaged trust. Vanessa and I might never share the close relationship I'd once hoped for. The financial boundaries I'd established would remain firmly in place. But it was a beginning, not of the old relationship, but of something new. Something built on mutual respect rather than obligation. Something where family meant more than access to my checkbook. I fingered the car keys Andrew had given me, not a demand for support, but a symbol of independence achieved. Perhaps that was the greatest gift a parent could receive, the knowledge that your child had finally learned to stand on their own. I closed the door against the winter chill, returning to my kitchen to wash the remaining dishes. My grandmother's Wedgwood china, each piece a link to the past, but also a bridge to a future I was only now learning to envision. A future where I existed not as an appendage to others' dreams, but as the author of my own. The plate that had once served me my greatest humiliation had ultimately delivered my most profound liberation. And for that, ironically, I had a paper plate to thank. The weeks following the car repossession were deafeningly silent. No calls from Andrew, no passive-aggressive texts from Vanessa. Even Caroline reported that they'd gone quiet in family group chats. I tried to convince myself this was a good thing, that the clean break was allowing everyone space to process. But 30 years of motherhood had wired me to worry when things went too quiet. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me. I found myself driving past their house one Tuesday morning, telling myself I was simply taking the scenic route to my pottery class. Their driveway sat empty, the blinds drawn. The yard, usually impeccably maintained, another expense I'd quietly covered for years, showed signs of neglect. Weeds poked through the mulch beds, and the hedges needed trimming. I felt a pang of guilt, quickly followed by irritation at myself for feeling it. This was the natural consequence of their choices, not just the recent disrespect, but years of financial dependence that had left them ill-equipped to manage on their own. Later that week, I ran into Patricia Williams at the grocery store. Patricia's daughter had been in Andrew's graduating class, and she'd always been a reliable source of community gossip, delivered with just enough concern to mask the underlying satisfaction. "Margaret, it's been ages," she exclaimed, abandoning her shopping cart to embrace me. "How are you holding up, dear? We've all been so worried." The "we" immediately put me on alert. "I'm quite well, thank you," I replied cautiously. "What exactly has everyone been worried about?" Patricia's expression shifted to one of practiced sympathy. "Well, with everything happening with Andrew and Vanessa, people talk, you know. Such a shame when families have these disagreements." I maintained a neutral expression, waiting for her to continue. Patricia could never resist filling a silence. "Vanessa was at the PTA meeting last week. Did you know she's volunteering at Andrew's school now? Anyway, she was quite upset. Said they'd had to sell their house because of some financial emergency. They're moving into that apartment complex on Westfield Avenue, the one near the train tracks." She paused, clearly expecting me to fill in the blanks. I kept my voice level. "I wasn't aware they'd decided to sell." Patricia leaned closer, lowering her voice to a stage whisper. She said something about a family betrayal forcing them out. I didn't want to pry, of course, but she left the sentence hanging, an open invitation for me to provide the full story. Instead, I smiled politely. "I'm sure they'll be fine. Andrew's always been resourceful. How is your daughter doing? I heard she moved to Phoenix?" The deflection worked, and Patricia launched into a detailed update on her daughter's life in Arizona. I nodded at appropriate intervals while my mind processed this new information. They were selling the house, the one I'd helped renovate, the one that still carried my lien. I wondered if they'd disclosed that financial obligation to potential buyers, or if that unpleasant surprise awaited at closing. When I finally extracted myself from Patricia, I sat in my car for several minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel. Part of me wanted to call Andrew immediately, to ask why he hadn't told me about the house sale himself. Another part, the newer, more self-protective part, reminded me that this distance was necessary. They'd made their choices. I'd made mine. That evening, I received a text message from an unknown number. "This is Vanessa. Since you've forced us to sell our home and taken away my transportation, I thought you should know we're moving to the Westfield Apartments next week, in case you want to drive by and enjoy the fruits of your revenge." The bitterness in her message was palpable, but something else struck me. She was texting from a number I didn't recognize. Had they changed their phone plans too? Cut their expenses that dramatically? I contemplated not responding, but eventually typed, "Thank you for letting me know. I wish you well in your new home." Her reply came seconds later. "Save your wishes. Your actions have made your true feelings perfectly clear." I set the phone down, suddenly exhausted. This wasn't how I'd imagined my relationship with my daughter-in-law would evolve. I'd dreamed of Sunday dinners and shared holidays, of being a grandmother who was welcome in their home. Instead, we'd reached this bitter impasse, with accusations and resentment flowing freely between us. Sleep eluded me that night. I paced the halls of my quiet home, second-guessing my decisions. Had I been too harsh? Was I punishing them for behavior I'd enabled for years? Was it fair to change the rules so abruptly? At dawn, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea, watching the sunrise paint gold across my garden. This home, the one they'd expected me to leverage for their benefit, had been my sanctuary since Robert died. Every corner held memories. The height marks on the doorframe charting Andrew's growth, the chipped tile in the entryway from when he'd dropped his baseball trophy in excitement, the window seat where I'd held him through his first heartbreak. I'd protected this home through years of single motherhood, working double shifts when necessary, foregoing vacations and new clothes and dinners out. I'd protected it because it represented security, not just for me, but for Andrew. I'd wanted him to always have a place that felt like home. What I hadn't realized until recently was that my home and my financial security had become interchangeable in his mind. The safety net I'd worked so hard to create had become an expected resource, available for their aspirations with no consideration for my future. By mid-morning, I'd reached a decision. I drove to my credit union and arranged a cashier's check for $3,000. It wasn't much, but it would help with moving expenses and perhaps a used car. Not the luxury sedan they'd lost, but reliable transportation that would allow Vanessa to get to work without depending on public transit. I wrote a brief note to accompany the check. "This is a gift, not a loan. I hope it helps with your transition. Love, Mom." Delivering it felt like crossing a battlefield. I drove to their house midday, when I knew Andrew would be teaching. Vanessa's car was gone, of course. It had been my car, technically, and now it was sold. But lights were on inside. I hesitated before approaching the door, the envelope heavy in my hand. Before I could ring the bell, the door swung open. Vanessa stood there, dressed in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked nothing like the polished, perfectly presented woman I'd grown accustomed to seeing. "I saw your car pull up," she said flatly. "What do you want?" I extended the envelope. "I wanted to give you this, for the move." She looked at the envelope, but didn't take it. "More legal papers? Another demand for payment? Haven't you taken enough from us?" "It's a gift," I said quietly. "No strings attached." Her laugh was sharp and bitter. "From you? There are always strings attached. That's your specialty, isn't it? Giving with one hand while keeping a ledger with the other?" The accusation stung, especially because it was the exact opposite of how our relationship had functioned for years. I'd given and given, expecting nothing in return but basic respect, and not even receiving that. "That's not fair, Vanessa." Fair? Her? Voice rose. You want to talk about fair? Was it fair to take our car without warning? To put a lien on our house that's forced us to sell at a loss? To turn my husband against me? That last accusation caught me off guard. Turn Andrew against you? I've done nothing of the sort. Her eyes narrowed. Really? Then why is he suddenly questioning every financial decision we've ever made? Why is he insisting we open separate bank accounts? Why did he say we needed to learn to stand on our own, like his mother did? A complicated mixture of emotions washed over me. Pride that Andrew was recognizing the importance of financial independence, sadness that it was creating tension in his marriage, confusion about my role in their conflict. Those sound like healthy changes, I said carefully. Vanessa crossed her arms. They're your changes, your influence. You couldn't stand that he chose me, that he built a life with me, so you're systematically destroying it. The absolute conviction in her voice was startling. In her version of events, I was the villain, manipulating and sabotaging their happiness, out of spite or jealousy. The gulf between her perception and my reality seemed unbridgeable. I should go, I said, setting the envelope on the small table beside the door. The money is yours if you want it. If not, donate it to charity. As I turned to leave, she called after me. He'll figure it out eventually, you know. He'll see what you're doing. I paused, looking back at her. What exactly do you think I'm doing, Vanessa? Punishing us, she said immediately. Punishing him for loving me, and me for taking him from you. In that moment, I saw something I'd missed before. Beneath her hostility and entitlement lay a profound insecurity. She truly believed she was competing with me for Andrew's affection, that his love was a finite resource that couldn't encompass both his mother and his wife. I've never seen it that way, I said softly. I've only wanted Andrew to be happy. I've only wanted both of you to be happy. Then why are you doing this to us? Her voice cracked slightly. Why are you making everything so hard? I considered my response carefully. Sometimes the most valuable things we learn come through difficulty. Andrew is learning financial independence. Perhaps you're learning something too. I left before she could reply, the weight of her misunderstanding heavy on my shoulders. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of her in my rearview mirror, still standing in the doorway, the envelope clutched in her hand. The next day, the check was deposited. She hadn't returned it or torn it up. It was a small victory, though I wasn't sure in what battle. 2 weeks later, Caroline called to tell me Andrew and Vanessa had completed their move to the Westfield apartments. It's actually a nice place, she assured me. Clean, safe, close to the school. Not what they're used to, but not the catastrophe Vanessa's been making it out to be. Have you seen Andrew? I asked, trying to keep the longing from my voice. Yesterday, she confirmed. He helped David move some furniture. He seems different. More serious, maybe. He asked about you. My heart quickened. What did he say? Just asked if I'd talked to you recently. Wanted to know if you were doing okay. She paused. I told him you'd started dating again. Caroline, I exclaimed. Why would you tell him that? I went on one coffee date with Martin from book club. That hardly constitutes dating again. She laughed. You should have seen his face, though. Complete shock. I think he's just now realizing you have a life beyond being his mother. The thought was both amusing and sad. Had I been so completely defined by my relationship with Andrew that even he couldn't imagine me as a whole person with desires and interests of my own? The weeks stretched into months. Fall turned to winter, bringing the first real snow just before Thanksgiving. I received no invitation to holiday dinner, though Caroline reported they'd hosted a small gathering at their apartment. It was nice, she said, clearly trying to soften the exclusion. Very casual. They used paper plates. the fancy kind with turkeys printed on them. The irony wasn't lost on me. December brought unexpected news from my attorney. The sale of Andrew and Vanessa's house had closed, and my lien had been satisfied in full. More surprisingly, they'd paid the interest as well, an amount I'd been prepared to forgive. They insisted, my attorney explained, said they wanted everything squared away properly. It was the first indication that perhaps something had shifted in their approach to financial responsibility. I felt a glimmer of hope that extended beyond the money itself. A hope that Andrew was truly learning the lessons I'd failed to teach him earlier. A week before Christmas, I received a card in the mail, store-bought but tasteful, with a winter scene on the front. Inside, Andrew had written, "Thinking of you this holiday season. Love, Andrew." Vanessa's name was conspicuously absent, but it was the first direct communication from my son in months. I placed it on my mantle alongside cards from friends and colleagues, trying not to assign it more significance than it deserved. Still, I found my eyes drawn to it whenever I passed. That simple acknowledgement of my existence a balm to months of silence. On Christmas Eve, I was preparing for a quiet evening alone. Caroline and her family had gone to her in-laws this year, when my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Andrew standing on my porch, a small wrapped package in his hands, snowflakes catching in his hair. "Merry Christmas, Mom," he said, his voice uncertain. "Can I come in for a minute?" I stepped back, opening the door wider, my heart pounding with a mixture of joy and apprehension. He entered hesitantly, as if no longer certain of his welcome, in the home where he'd grown up. "I can't stay long," he explained. "Vanessa's waiting in the car." I glanced past him to see their new vehicle, a modest used Toyota, idling at the curb. I could make out Vanessa's silhouette in the passenger seat, her posture rigid. "She didn't want to come in," Andrew said, following my gaze, "but she agreed I should bring this by." He handed me the small package. Inside was a gift card to my favorite garden center, along with a note in Andrew's handwriting. "For your spring planting. Thank you for teaching me to grow." "It's not much," he said, watching me read the note. "But I wanted you to know I've been thinking about our conversations, about independence and respect." I nodded, afraid my voice might break if I spoke. "We've been taking financial literacy classes at the community center," he continued, "learning about budgeting, saving, retirement planning. Things I should have learned years ago." "That's wonderful, Andrew." He shifted uncomfortably. "Vanessa's still angry. She thinks you did all this to punish us. But I'm starting to see it differently." "How so?" He met my eyes directly for the first time since arriving. "I think you did it because you love me. Because you saw that I was becoming someone who took without giving back, who expected support without earning it. The insight caught me off guard. I'd been prepared for continued anger or resentment, not this moment of clarity." "The car situation has been hard," he admitted. "Vanessa hated taking the bus at first, said it was humiliating. But we saved. Enough for the Toyota. No loans, no co-signers, just our money. It felt different, like we'd earned it." Pride swelled in my chest. "That's exactly it, Andrew. Earning something changes how you value it." He nodded slowly. "I'm starting to understand that. I'm starting to understand a lot of things." From the car, a horn beeped, a gentle reminder that Vanessa was waiting. "I should go," Andrew said. "But I wanted to ask, would you consider having dinner with us sometime? At our apartment? It's not fancy, but I'd love that," I said quickly before he could qualify the invitation further. A small smile tugged at his lips. "Good, that's good. Maybe after the holidays? When things are less hectic? Whenever works for you." He hesitated, then stepped forward and hugged me briefly. "Merry Christmas, Mom." As he walked back to the car, I called after him. "Andrew, what kind of plates do you use these days?" He turned, puzzled at first, then understanding dawned. A genuine laugh escaped him, the first I'd heard in months. "Ceramic, Mom. We use the dishes you gave us when we first moved in together. The ones that match your set." It wasn't forgiveness. Exactly. It wasn't a complete resolution to the hurt and misunderstandings that had accumulated between us. But it was a beginning, a recognition that family relationships like fine china required careful handling and proper respect. As their car pulled away, I held the garden center gift card against my heart. Spring was still months away, but already I could envision the new growth it would bring. Not just in my garden, but in the tentative new relationship forming with my son. A relationship built on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. A relationship where we both recognized each other as complete individuals, not just as roles to be played. Vanessa might never fully understand or forgive my actions. She might always see me as the villain in her story, the manipulative mother-in-law who forced her onto public transportation and out of her dream home. But Andrew was beginning to see more clearly, and that was enough for now. I closed the door, against the winter chill, returning to my quiet evening alone. But it no longer felt lonely. Instead, it felt like a conscious choice, a space I'd created for myself, filled with the things that brought me joy. A space where I could welcome others on my terms, with mutual respect as the only price of admission. And if someday Vanessa decided to join us at that table, she would find her place set with the same fine china as everyone else. No paper plates in sight. The dinner at their new Ridgeview home was tentative but civil. Vanessa had clearly made an effort. Fresh flowers on the table, a well-prepared meal, polite conversation about neutral topics. As promised, we ate from the china set I'd given them. Not a paper plate in sight. The symbolism wasn't lost on any of us. Their new house was modest but charming, a far cry from the luxury estate in Oak Ridge they'd once envisioned. 3 bedrooms, a small yard, walking distance to good schools. It suited them better than they'd ever imagined it would. "The commute is actually shorter from here," Andrew told me as we sat in their cozy living room after dinner. "And the neighbors are nice, mostly young families like us." Vanessa nodded. Her agreement. "We've started having monthly block parties. Everyone brings a dish to share. It's nice, community-oriented." The Vanessa I'd known before would have scorned such simple pleasures, chasing instead the exclusivity of gated communities and country club memberships. This shift toward appreciating connection over status represented a significant transformation. "We're thinking about starting a family soon," Andrew added, glancing at Vanessa for confirmation. "Now that we're settled here, it feels like the right time." "That's wonderful," I said sincerely. "You'll make wonderful parents." Vanessa's expression softened slightly. "We've been taking financial planning classes at the community center, learning about college savings accounts, life insurance, that sort of thing." Again, I felt that clean, distant pride in their growth. That's exactly what you should be doing, planning ahead. As I prepared to leave, Vanessa handed me a small package. "It's nothing fancy," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "Just something I thought you might like." Inside was a delicate ceramic teacup, hand-painted with spring flowers. "I noticed you've been collecting pottery pieces," she explained, when I looked up in surprise. "I saw this at the farmer's market last weekend and thought of you." The gift was modest in cost, but significant in meaning, a recognition of my interests, my personhood beyond my role as Andrew's mother or their financial safety net. "It's beautiful," I said truthfully. "Thank you, Vanessa." In the months that followed, we established a new rhythm. Sunday dinners at my house once a month, occasional phone calls, small gestures of reconnection. The relationship remained careful, boundaries clearly maintained on both sides. I never offered financial assistance. They never asked for it. We were finding our way toward a different kind of family connection, one built on mutual respect. rather than obligation or entitlement. When they announced Vanessa's pregnancy 6 months later, the joy was genuine on all sides. As I hugged her, the first real embrace we'd ever shared, she whispered, "We want you involved, Margaret." As a grandmother, not a checkbook. The distinction meant everything. Their daughter, Emily Rose, was born on a bright spring morning, 8 pounds of pink-cheeked perfection. When I arrived at the hospital with a small gift, a handmade quilt, I'd spent months creating. Vanessa surprised me by immediately placing the baby in my arms. "She's beautiful," I whispered, overcome with emotion. "Absolutely perfect." "We think so too," Andrew said proudly, his arm around Vanessa's shoulders. Though we're already terrified about college costs, started a 529 plan before she was even born. I laughed, recognizing the gentle joke for what it was. Acknowledgement of their financial independence, their commitment to providing for their daughter without relying on others. Smart planning, I approved, though she might decide to be a world-famous potter instead of a college student. Vanessa smiled, her exhausted face lighting up. "If she gets your creative talent, that wouldn't surprise me at all." It was a small moment, this exchange of gentle teasing and genuine compliments, but it represented miles of progress from where we'd begun. The path from paper plates to mutual respect had been longer and more painful than any of us could have anticipated, but standing there with my granddaughter in my arms, I knew every difficult step had been necessary. As Emily grew from newborn to infant to toddler, our family evolved as well. Vanessa and I would never be best friends. Our personalities and perspectives remained too different for that. But we developed a functional relationship based on mutual respect and shared love for Emily. Andrew flourished in his career, earning a promotion to department chair at his school. They managed their finances carefully, saving for the future while enjoying simple pleasures in the present. And I continued my own journey of self-discovery. My pottery advanced from hobby to serious avocation, with several pieces selected for the regional art fair. I traveled to Italy with my book club, something I'd dreamed of for decades, but never prioritized. I dated occasionally, nothing serious, but enjoyable companionship that enriched my life. 3 years after the paper plate incident, I received an unexpected invitation from Vanessa. "We're hosting a dinner party next Saturday," she explained over the phone. "Nothing fancy, just a few friends from the neighborhood. We'd love for you to join us." When I arrived at their home that evening, I was touched to find my place at the table set with the Wedgwood china that matched my own heirloom set. Everyone else had the everyday dishes they normally used, neither better nor worse, just different. No one was elevated, no one was diminished. We were all simply guests at the same table, equal in value and welcome. As the evening progressed, I watched Vanessa move among her guests with genuine warmth and hospitality. She'd found her footing in this modest home in ways she never had in their previous, more upscale residence. The neighbors clearly adored little Emily, who toddled from lap to lap, collecting hugs and kisses. Andrew seemed relaxed and content, a world away from the anxious, status-conscious man he'd been when married to the old Vanessa. Later, as I helped clean up in the kitchen, Vanessa approached with an unusually serious expression. "Can we talk? For a minute?" she asked, nodding toward the back porch. We stepped outside into the cool evening air, cups of coffee warming our hands against the autumn chill. For a long moment, Vanessa simply stared out at their small backyard, seemingly gathering her thoughts. "I've never properly apologized," she finally said. "For the paper plates. For all of it, really." I started to wave away the apology. It seemed unnecessary after so much time had passed, but she stopped me with a raised hand. "Please, let me say this. I've been working on it in therapy for months." She took a deep breath. "What I did that night was deliberately cruel. I wanted to put you in your place, to show you that you weren't special. that you didn't deserve the same treatment as us. It was. She struggled for the right word. Petty, mean-spirited, ungrateful. I nodded, acknowledging her words without interrupting. When you took the car and put the lien on our house, I was furious. I felt victimized, betrayed. I couldn't see that what you'd done was simply establish consequences for our actions, consequences we'd never had to face before. She sipped her coffee, staring out at the darkened yard. I hated taking the bus, hated it with every fiber of my being. I felt humiliated, reduced, invisible. "I'm sorry it was so difficult," I said quietly. She shook her head. "Don't be. It was the best thing that could have happened to me." A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. I met people on that bus. Real people, with real lives and real struggles. People who took the bus every day, not as a punishment, but as a normal part of their existence. People who had never owned a luxury car and probably never would. Her perspective shift surprised me. That must have been eye-opening. Completely. I realized how sheltered I'd been, how narrow my view of the world, how I'd been chasing status symbols that didn't actually make me happy. She turned to face me directly. Taking that bus every day was a better education than my entire college experience. We stood in companionable silence for a moment, the weight of years of misunderstanding finally lifting between us. "I want Emily to understand value," Vanessa continued. "Real value, not price tags. I want her to know that worth isn't measured by the car you drive or the address on your mail." She smiled ruefully. "I want her to be a better person than I was." "You're giving her a wonderful foundation," I assured her. "And you're not the person you were then. None of us are." She nodded thoughtfully. "I still enjoy nice things," she admitted with a small laugh. "I haven't become a complete ascetic, but I understand now that they're just things. They don't define me." As we rejoined the party inside, I found myself reflecting on the extraordinary journey we'd all taken over the past 3 years. From that humiliating paper plate dinner to this warm, inclusive gathering. From financial dependence to self-sufficiency. From superficial materialism to deeper values. None of it had been easy. The pain of those confrontations, the months of silence, the slow rebuilding of trust, each step had required courage and commitment from all of us. But standing in their modest living room, watching Emily dance in circles to her father's guitar playing, I knew with complete certainty that it had been worth it. Later that night, as Andrew walked me to my car, he paused, his expression thoughtful. "Do you ever regret it, Mom? Taking such a hard line with us?" I considered the question carefully. "I regret that it caused so much pain for all of us. I regret that I didn't establish healthier boundaries years earlier, before things reached that breaking point." I met his gaze directly. "But no, I don't regret the decisions themselves. They were necessary, even if they were difficult." He nodded slowly. "I think I understand that now. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is not to rescue them." A smile tugged at his lips, though it rarely feels kind in the moment. "Rarely," I agreed, returning his smile. "But you and Vanessa have built something remarkable here. A home, a family, a life that truly belongs to you. Not because someone handed it to you, but because you created it yourselves." "We had a good teacher," he said softly, pulling me into a hug. "Even if we were slow students." As I drove home that night, I reflected on the strange, circuitous path that had led us here. Who would have thought that a paper plate, that flimsy, disposable symbol of casual disregard, would become the catalyst for such profound transformation? Who could have predicted that taking away a car would lead Vanessa to discoveries about herself and the world that no luxury vehicle could ever have facilitated? Life rarely follows the routes we expect. Sometimes we have to take the bus instead of driving the car we'd counted on. Sometimes we have to downsize our dreams to discover what truly matters. Sometimes we have to lose what we thought we wanted to find what we actually need. By the time Emily started kindergarten, the paper plate incident had become family legend, a cautionary tale we could finally laugh about, the pivotal moment that changed everything. Remember when Grandma made, "Mom, take the bus?" Emily would ask, giggling at the very concept of her now confident mother struggling with public transportation schedules. "Best thing that ever happened to me," Vanessa would reply, catching my eye with a smile of genuine understanding. Sometimes the lessons that teach us the most are the ones we resist the hardest. On Emily's 6th birthday, they hosted a party in their backyard. Children ran through sprinklers while parents chatted in the shade of the maple tree Andrew had planted when they first moved in. As I helped Vanessa set up the picnic tables, I noticed something that made me pause. A package of paper plates, the fancy kind with colorful birthday designs. Seeing my expression, Vanessa laughed. "For the kids," she explained. "Less cleanup, less chance of broken dishes. But don't worry." She nodded toward the adult table, where her everyday china was neatly arranged. "We adults get the real thing." I joined her laughter, appreciating both the practicality of the decision and the thoughtfulness behind it. "Smart planning," I approved, though I wouldn't have minded a paper plate under the circumstances. She shook her head firmly. "Not in my house, Margaret. Not after everything we've learned." As the party progressed and children's laughter filled the yard, I found myself seated next to one of the neighborhood mothers, a friendly woman named Diane who taught at the local elementary school. "Vanessa tells me you were a nurse," she said conversationally. "My sister's in nursing too. Such important work." "I loved every minute of it," I replied truthfully, though retirement has its perks as well. She nodded, watching the children play. "I understand you taught Vanessa and Andrew some pretty significant life lessons too," she said with a knowing smile. "Something about paper plates and public transportation?" I laughed, surprised that Vanessa had shared our history with her friends. It wasn't my finest teaching moment, more of a desperate last resort, really. Diane's expression grew more serious. "Vanessa credits you with changing their lives, for the better, I mean. She says you taught them the difference between entitlement and earning." She glanced toward where Vanessa knelt beside Emily, helping her unwrap a gift. "That's a rare lesson these days, and not an easy one to teach, or to learn." Her words touched me deeply. For all the pain and conflict of that period, knowing that Vanessa, not just Andrew, but Vanessa herself, recognized the value of what had happened, made it worthwhile. "The hardest lessons are often the most important," I said simply. As the afternoon sun began to lower, casting long shadows across the yard, Andrew gathered everyone for cake and ice cream. Emily, crown askew on her dark curls, beamed with 6-year-old delight as we sang the birthday song. Vanessa caught my eye across the gathering, raising her china plate in a small private toast. In that moment, surrounded by the family we'd rebuilt from the broken pieces of the old one, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey from paper plates to china, from entitlement to gratitude, from financial dependence to self-sufficiency, had been longer and harder than any of us could have imagined. There had been tears and anger, silence and reconciliation, painful truths and hard-won wisdom. But standing in this backyard, watching my son and daughter-in-law create a home filled with love and laughter for my granddaughter, I knew with absolute certainty it had been worth every difficult step. And as Emily blew out her candles with a mighty puff of 6-year-old determination, I made a silent wish of my own, that she would grow up understanding the lessons her parents had learned so painfully. That worth isn't measured by possessions, but by character. That respect must be mutual to be meaningful. That true independence is more valuable than handed-down luxury. And most importantly, that sometimes the greatest act of love is not giving someone what they want, but helping them discover what they truly need. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.